Arc 7, The Land of the Wolves. Chapter 33, now, onto the journey towards the Demon City. He would use what he could to reclaim the imperial throne of Wallachia. He would not only use the fortress city of Quarrel, but also the people of Shudrak, General Second-Class Zik Rosman, and of course, Natsuki Subaru. Yes, Abel had just nodded his head in agreement to Subaru's confirmation. Priscilla, this affair seems to have been settled. Priscilla so muttered after seeing the conclusion of the meeting, covering her mouth with her open fan. Just as she had stated, the meeting had come to a consensus. The victory conditions were understood by all, their future course of action was decided, and their next destination and goal were set. And then, Subaru, if it's just a select few that are going to Chaos Flame, what about the others? Currently, it's just me, Abel, Tarita-san, and Medium-san. Al, on that note, can I say one thing? Subaru, Al? Subaru was about to select the final members for their next destination, the Demon City of Chaos Flame, when Al butted in. He raised the hand of his lone arm, then scratching the back of his own neck with said lifted hand. Al, princess, can I step away from your reins for a moment? I want to stay with Bro's group. Subaru, you? Al, oh, come on, your voice is cracking, bro. Is it really all that surprising? In response to that unexpected proposal, Subaru's voice cracked, which prompted a quiver from Al's throat. But even though he had stated so like it was nothing, Subaru couldn't just voice his agreement. Subaru, WHY. Al, I told you everything, didn't I? I said I'd help you, bro. Even a doddering old man like me can be useful in some way. Subaru, you. You were that serious? Al answered by shrugging his burly shoulders, and Subaru thought back to the talk he'd had with him before joining the meeting, and was surprised at how he had adhered to the conversation they'd had. It was true that he had encouraged him, it was true that he had raised his spirits, and it was true that he had pushed him onwards. However, he had not expected him to go as far as seriously saying he would cooperate. Al, why are you frozen stiff? Did my offer impress you that much? Subaru, no, shielding away my initial surprise, I haven't heard anything about you being strong, Al, and with me and Abel, the ratio of men to women in our group's just awful. Al, sorry if I got your hopes up, but I'm a lot weaker than the Amazon Nachon over there. Pointing at Tarita with a snap, Al proudly assured him that he was fairly pathetic. In fact, Tarita's ability probably ranked among the best in the people of Shudrak, but after witnessing the battle with a member of the 9 Divine Generals, she was a rather unreliable battle reinforcement. Anyhow, Subaru, still, I'm glad to hear you say that. I'll accept your sentiment. Al, don't worry about it, bro. Just the sentiment? Are you turning me down gently, perhaps? Are you saying we're not tied together this time? Al had endless questions about Subaru's response, but there was no mistaking how he took it. He was really happy about the offer, but this was the Wallachian Empire. In the first place, more so than Flop and Medium, that Al was participating in the war was purely by chance. Priscilla, Al. Al, yeah, princess. While Subaru made his conclusions, a beautiful voice next to him unexpectedly called out Al's name. The owner of the voice was, of course, Priscilla Bariel, who sat proudly at the round table. She squinted her crimson eyes and turned her emotionless gaze to Al. To her own follower Al, who had just announced his next move. Priscilla, you were the one who offered to accompany me to the fortress city, were you not? And now you wish to leave me, and go on an amusement trip with your clownish friend? Al, I don't think it's gonna be a carefree trip, but that's the plan. Or are you gonna miss me, princess? If you'd like to hug me and hold me back, go right ahead. Priscilla, nonsense. Al, right. Al's light-hearted comment was interrupted with a snarky remark, and he sagged down. It looked he hadn't been expecting much anyway. While staring at the top of Al's head through his helmet, Priscilla let out a small breath and said, Priscilla, dance well, as best you can. Al, oh, I gotcha. Princess is the one who shouldn't be careless just because Schult and I ain't around. Princess's beauty is the world's beauty. Priscilla, I needn't be told that. Who do you take me for? Al, of course, you're the center of the world, my princess, Priscilla Bariel. Al said those pretentious words in a droll tone and bowed frivolously in front of Priscilla. Then he turned around and raised his hand to Subaru, saying let's go. Subaru, what, that exchange made everything final? What about my opinion? Al, what's with all the reluctance? It's depressing. Or is it just that I haven't noticed that I smell like an old man? Like, is it a pain for you to be around me? Subaru, I'm not talking about that. I mean, what gives you the right to decide? Al, no, of course you're free to refuse, you know. But how can I refuse? It's the princess, yeah? Al cocked his chin, indicating Priscilla, who was fanning her face. This regal behavior was the overwhelming basis for Al's words. To overturn Priscilla's decision, just how terrifying would that be? Nevertheless, if it'd lead to uncertainty in the future, refusal was not an option. Subaru, Priscilla, I'm Abel, I do not mind. He may follow us if need be. Subaru, Abel, damn you, you're not treating me like a military strategist. However, just as Subaru was about to present his opinion to Priscilla, he was shot in the back again. Subaru glared at Abel, who had interrupted him, and he, too, crossed his arms proudly as he opposed the former. Like Priscilla, he intended to stubbornly fulfill his intentions here as well. However, Subaru had no choice but to appeal directly to him with the argument that the terms of employment were different. Subaru, what's the point of being a military strategist if my opinions aren't even taken into account? Abel, do not be presumptuous. If your opinion were worth listening to, I would listen to it. Nevertheless, I am the one who calls the final shots. I would not entrust it to you. Subaru, GNNH, are you a nasty boss who takes away the fruits of his workers' labor? Abel, do not force me to repeat myself. The results are yours. They must be. Subaru. The emperor who had been ousted from his throne had a wise person following him that could not be underestimated. What Abel wanted was a Subaru with such a reputation. And he was willing to give Subaru credit and exaggerate a bit to get it. But that was no different than building up a myth. Subaru, being a fake isn't good enough. It's got to be the real thing, or I'll never get back what I lost. Abel. If such is the case, then do attempt to convince me and everyone else with your own actions. If you cannot achieve it, it remains as a foolish and delusional remark harboring great ambitions. Subaru, bastard, I'll do it. I'll put any useless loans to good use. Biting down hard on his molars, Subaru replied, peering into Abel's cold black eyes. Even though they were facing the same direction, they did not have a relationship where they could lower their guard around each other. Rather than the difference in the soil they stood on, as in the kingdom and the empire, it was something bigger that seemed to be the reason for such a divide. As long as that was the case, he may disagree with Abel on a crucial point. And once that happened, Natsuki Subaru. Al, perhaps he meant me as a useless loan, princess? Priscilla, fool. Priscilla only briefly responded to Al, who slumped his shoulders and muttered that. The members of the expedition to the demon city of Chaos Flame had been decided, and the plan was set in motion. Abel, get the soldiers of the fortress city together by the time I return. I shall send word back soon. Zikr, I will, even if it costs me my life. Receiving Abel's command, Zikr knelt down on one knee and reverently obeyed it. Zikr, who had unexpectedly found himself in the position of an enemy of the mighty empire, had no hesitation in his stance, but, naturally, that did not apply to the entirety of the city's troops. In order to unify their intentions and bring them together as a single army, the efforts of the generals would be essential. In that sense, Zikr's presence was a boon. Subaru, Zikr-san, I know this is a lot of work, but... Zikr, no, this is the role that I, as a general, am supposed to play. It is nothing compared to the bloodless siege. Subaru. Subaru cast his eyes down at Zikr's words, who gave a strong and proud smile. Subaru's track record was that he had set up a bloodless siege, claimed he could do it, and failed miserably. As a result, he had failed to meet Rem's expectations and had caused her disappointment. However, Zikr smiled at Subaru's work. Zikr, do not be discouraged, you proposed the bloodless siege, and His Excellency approved it. And the fact is that I and my subordinates joined your ranks without shedding a single drop of blood. Subaru, without shedding a drop of blood, that's an exaggerated expression, yet Subaru choked upon seeing the bandage wrapped around Zikr's injury. But Zikr's cheeks relaxed, and then he forcibly peeled off his own bandage. The bloodstained bandage was removed, revealing the wound on his arm. Zikr, for a soldier, this is merely a scratch. Moreover, you should be proud. Because, as a result of your efforts, the number of generals and soldiers fighting for His Excellency has not decreased. Subaru. Zikr, you are to do your duty. Miss Natsumi. Subaru knew not if he would be able to respond properly to those words from Zikr. However, even though Subaru could not give praise to himself outright, he had a newfound fondness for Zikr's character for finding something to praise, and the fact that he had not allowed his death was an achievement. Anne. Are you sure you want to go? Subaru. No, that was something ridiculous to say. Forget it. And with that, Rem, whose eyes could not hide her fatigue, shook her head. Rem stood at the entrance of the city hall with her cane. She was not dressed in traveling gear, but in the light vestment of a healing practitioner scrambling around to help the wounded. Rem would remain in Quarrel. It was a temporary separation from Subaru, who was on his way to Chaos Flame. Before parting, Subaru smiled at that comment from Rem, who had come to see him off. Even though he knew it was out of concern, he couldn't help it. Subaru, well, it's not all been good, but it's hard on me for you to tell me to forget something about you. Rem, oh, I didn't mean to. Subaru, because everything you've given me, whether a strangled neck or a broken finger, is a precious memory that I can't live without. Rem, huh? He had not meant to make fun of her, but he ended up being pierced by Rem's glaciated eyes. When he thought back to the events that had impacted him since he was sent to Wallachia, it was just that many of the memories that popped into his mind held a powerful pang of pain and suffering. Of course, there were many, many memories of hope and joy that he had stored deep in his heart, such as the fact that he had been able to come to terms with Rem and that she cared for him. But the most painful memories were stored in the same place, too. Rem, you're not nervous. Are you really alright? Subaru, you know, it's exhausting to be tense all the time. If you're asking me if I'm okay, I'd say I've got a lot on my mind. If I could, I'd stay by your side forever. Rem, ha. Subaru, an indifferent reply. No, I'm just glad you're not ignoring me. He was hurt by that casual attitude, but the words Subaru told Rem were his true feelings. There had been a great deal of last-minute agonizing over leaving Rem in Quarrel. To be frank, even at this moment, he wanted to retract his previous statement, grab her by her slim arms, and whisk her away. How good it would be to have Rem within Natsuki Subaru's arm's reach, to protect her from the hardships, fires, and every possible bad thing that could befall her. Subaru, in fact, I'd even like to tie you and me together the whole time with an unbreakable cord. Rem, are you serious? Subaru, somewhat. Rem. Finally, he wasn't even able to get her to say huh? Of course, he knew that he would have been rejected had been serious about it, so he just went for it. It would be best if he could tie himself to Rem all the time, so that he would always know if she was safe and sound. Depending on the situation, he may have to resort to the power he had awakened at Pleiades' watchtower. Subaru, I'm not sure how to use Cor Leonis either. Subaru's new authority, Cor Leonis, which had manifested at Pleiades' watchtower, it was the ability to vaguely grasp the location and situation of his allies, with Subaru at the center. In addition, Cor Leonis allowed Subaru to take on the burden of his friends and keep them in good health. Perhaps he could use his power to take the burden of Rem's crippled legs and let her run around the fields and mountains in high spirits. He didn't want Rem to go out of reach by doing that, though. Subaru. Rem, hey, why do you look so depressed all of a sudden? Subaru, nothing, I'm just self-loathing here. Rem pointed out, and Subaru sighed, holding his own deflated face in his hands. It occurred to him that Rem's limp had kept her in a place where she could not get away from Subaru. The fact that she was incapable of escaping was one of the things that kept Subaru and Rem from ending their relationship. The fact that Rem was not in perfect shape made him think that he was lucky. Subaru, this is why Rem can't trust me. Subaru was always thinking only of himself. He wished to be gentler. He desired to be kind, smart, and strong. He had been working hard for the sake of everyone, and now that he had taken another good look at himself in the tower, it was still not enough. He could not retrieve the Natsuki Subaru that Rem believed in. Rem, Subaru, sorry. I was getting a little sentimental. Rem, Senshi what, now? Subaru, don't worry about it. It's an expression that's only understood by Al and my hometown. Rem frowned slightly as Subaru shrugged his shoulders and replied. However, she rubbed her eyes and erased the wrinkles, as if to put off the feelings growing inside her. There must be a lot of conflicts within Rem. Even the fact that she had come out to see him off like this must have been something she had put a lot of thought into. Subaru, I'm not going to be away for long, because I won't be able to stand it without you. Rem, there you go doing that again. Subaru, ugh, I mean it though. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, I'll restrain myself as much as I can. Rem, you're not going to try to stop, are you? Subaru's shoulders slumped in remorse as he was met with a stare. Of course, he did not want to offend Rem nor to make her uncomfortable. But that would not stop his strong feelings for Rem from overflowing. No matter what Subaru, who had disappointed Rem, said. Subaru, good luck, and I'll be back soon. I'll bring back good news. Rem, yes, I'm looking forward to Abel-san, Medium-san, and Terita-san. Subaru, setting aside Al, what about me? Rem. Subaru asked, just to be sure, but the temperature of Rem's gaze remained unchanged. However, Subaru must have looked very miserable with that answer, because Rem fell silent for a while, then let out a small breath as if giving up, and stated, Rem, it'd be a lot better if I were to talk about believing or not believing in you. Subaru, you're not talking about believing or not believing. Rem, as usual the evil smell still hasn't faded, but that's not the problem. Subaru, that's not the problem. Rem's pale blue eyes continued to do so, a glint of disbelief in them that would not vanish. They were going to be separated from each other, even if merely temporarily. Her distrust, even though he was aware that its origin had been Subaru's blunder in Quarrel, he wished to get rid of it, even if but a tad. Not so much for Subaru's own sake, but for the sake of Rem's feelings as she waited in the city. Subaru, tell you what, Rem, I'll do the best I can. How can I help you get rid of your anxiety, or whatever it is? Rem, well, why are you still dressed like that then? Subaru, Subaru looked down at himself as Rem spoke so with scornful eyes. A wig with long sable hair, white powder to hide flaws, an outfit carefully designed to hide his body's contours, and ornaments that were not overly flamboyant. Subaru, is there something strange about it? Rem, one of the strange things is that there's nothing strange about it, and one of the strange things is that you're still dressed like that even when you're leaving the fortress city. What defense do you have for that? Subaru, no, that's why I explained to you that this is something that needs to be done. While watching the temperature of Rem's eyes plummet, Subaru let out a sound like a shriek as he continued his Natsumi Schwartz shtick. It was completely unexpected that this outfit was playing a role in her disbelief, but as he had relayed to Rem, there was a good reason for this. Subaru, Rem, I already told you yesterday, we're people from a neighboring country. And if my real name gets out, I'm going to be in danger across this country. That's why I need it. I can't be the real me, I must be Natsumi Schwartz. Rem, I see. Subaru, a reply that doesn't dispel your disbelief at all. The temperature of Rem's eyes did not change, and in fact, she grew ever more distrustful. However, this was a countermeasure devised in earnest after weighing up Subaru's situation and the role he had been assigned. The name Natsuki Subaru could not be permitted to gain a reputation in the Valachian Empire. Natsuki Subaru was already Emilia's knight, a major figure in the kingdom of Lagunica. In other words, what he was doing now would undeniably count as impressive interference in the internal affairs of a neighboring country. Subaru, interfering in another country's internal affairs isn't about being impressive or whatever. Whatever the case, the important point was that the consequences of Subaru's actions, and the responsibility for them, did not rest with Subaru alone. Bluntly, it might cause trouble for Emilia. As her knight, Subaru, who had sworn to help her on her way to becoming the monarch, could never allow her to be dragged down like that. Subaru, that's where Natsumi Schwartz comes in. It doesn't matter how well-known Natsumi becomes. Natsumi will just be a beautiful black-haired girl who suddenly appeared in the Valachian Empire. Rem, are you finished? Subaru, not yet, no. Also, I wager that Natsumi Schwartz's name will leave a chance for my friends in Lagunica to notice me. Rather, that was the main reason for assuming the pseudonym of Natsumi Schwartz. This instance in the Valachia Empire did not mark the first time that Subaru had dressed up as a woman and called himself Natsumi Schwartz. There had been a time when he dressed up as a woman not as a sideshow at Roswell's mansion but out of necessity, and his true identity had been known to everyone except Emilia. The alias he had given at that time had been the same one. In other words, in the future, if Subaru's existence became renowned in the Empire as Abel had hoped, and if the name that spread were to be that of Natsumi Schwartz, Emilia and the gang may have the opportunity to know that Subaru and the others have been sent to the Empire. Hence, Subaru, I'm dressed like this out of necessity. Rem. I understand. It took quite a while, but he was relieved that Rem understood his approach. Anyway, that was the reason why Subaru's cross-dressing would be maintained for a little while longer. He did not want to undermine Rem's trust by having it prolong itself, but that would depend on the situation. Subaru, Rem, if you have a problem, talk to Flop-san or Zicker-san. If it's too difficult for a man, Mazelda-san and the others are there. Don't keep it all to yourself. Rem, it doesn't make sense for you to say that, but I'll consider it. You as well, please try not to bother Abel-san or Medium-san. Subaru, I'll just watch my back. Medium and Terita aside, Subaru was not going to shy away from burdening Abel. Once in a while, Abel should have his cool demeanor broken, struggle, and break a sweat. Once they had said their goodbyes and passed a few words of caution, it was time to depart. repressing the difficulty of leaving before the journey. Subaru, Rem, where's that girl? Rem, you mean Louis-John? I think she's with Utakata right now. Subaru, I see. Rem, you don't want me to go and get her, do you? The tone of her voice dropped, and Rem gave him a questioning look. The tone of her voice was not pleasant, though she knew Subaru's intentions. Rather, the tone was one of deep-seated irritation and bitterness. Since the battles at the city hall, Subaru's suspicions about Louis had remained unchanged, despite the fact that they'd had very little contact in their hectic schedule. In fact, his suspicions were never cleared up. Even though she seemed to have a soft spot for Rem and Utakata, and was getting along well with the Shadrakians and the others, there was no telling when and where she might reveal her true nature. In that sense, he was worried about leaving Louis behind. It was just that. Rem, you've already been keeping your eyes away from her for the entire duration of the mission to take down Quarrel already, right? Subaru. Rem, after all this time, it's still at this. Upon being told that by Rem, Subaru had no words to reply. If Louis was going to take any action, she had already possessed several chances to do so. So it was probably useless to keep on being wary of Louis. Subaru, for the time being, I've already told Kuna and the others that they should remain vigilant. Rem, stubborn. A minute whisper of a word, and having caught it, Subaru mulled over it for a moment. The reason why he had not disclosed Louis's true nature and dangerous powers to Rem in the first place was because she had no basis whatsoever to believe Subaru's story. To lose Rem's trust and alienate her by telling her about Louis's situation was not within his wishes. But what about now? Their relationship had improved and she listened to him, albeit coldly. Maybe now she would not be so dismissive when he talked about Louis's true nature. Subaru, no, don't do anything stupid. Subaru shook his head and rejected the idea that had faintly popped into his head. She might believe him, but even then it would be pointless. Thus far, Louis had not revealed her true colors. It was hard to believe that she would give away her true nature as soon as he talked to Rem. The situation would remain the same. It would only make Subaru feel better, but in turn, it would increase Rem's anxiety. There was no need to do that. Rem, what's with that face? Subaru, yeah, I was just hoping that only good fortune rains down on Rem's life. Rem, huh? Rem's line of sight became narrower, as Subaru attempted to keep the warmth welling up inside him at bay. However, if he tried to say something, the conversation would go on and on and on and on. Bro! It's high time we left. So said Al, leaning against the carriage, waving his lone hand. Behind him was a carriage and a single horse-like creature boasting a body as sizable as the carriage, a creature called a galewind horse, which was said to pull them along their journey. Rem, I've heard that it's a rare animal in Wallachia, it seems it's only given to generals. Subaru, Zikr-san lent it to me. She's actually female, so he's consistent. Rem, consistent. Rem tilted her head, seemingly unconvinced by Subaru's words. This was how Rem reacted to Subaru's words, for better or worse. Such happy circumstances would have to be put on hold for a while. Al, oh bro? Rem, Alsen is calling for you. Subaru, yeah, I know. I'm aware of that. Rem. Subaru, the soles of my shoes think it's hard to leave your side and lift off the ground. Ouch, ouch, ouch. The tip of the cane poked his back, and the sole of the shoe that should have been attached to the ground left it. He was forced to take 2 or 3 more steps forward, opening the distance between him and Rem. The distance between them became real. Subaru, Rem, I've told you many times. Rem, I'll be careful. I'll also be vigilant. If I'm in trouble, I'll turn to someone else. Goodbye. Subaru, Subaru's shoulders slumped and he wilted as he was told goodbye in a harsh fashion. Directing her eyes towards him, Rem sighed deeply and said, Rem, take care and have a good trip. I'll be waiting for your return. Subaru, oh. Rem, I'm not going to disappear all of a sudden. There are people other than you I trust. She added onto it, and Subaru reflected on it carefully. Then he shook his head several times, even as Rem frowned in disgust, and Subaru, I'm off. And with a big wave of his hand, he was sent off by Rem. The carriage was moving away, passing through the main gate of the fortress city and disappearing into the distance. The carriage was headed southeast of the city, to the demon city of Chaos Flame, where one of the most powerful people in the Empire was based, and the focus was on whether or not they could persuade that person to join them. To be honest, if it meant recruiting someone, the choice to take Subaru with them was questionable. I am certain that anyone would agree that you are putting in effort. With her cane, Rem squinted at the tracks of the carriage, which was no longer visible. Subaru had been in a joking mood up until the moment they parted. He had made all sorts of excuses, but all Rem could think of was that he did not want to stop dressing as a woman. Of course, it did not signify that she believed all of the excuses to be lies. They have parted. The city shall be a little more airy once the boisterous ones have left. I am not sure, however, if they shall be bringing back good news, or Abel's head. Rem, Priscilla-san. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind Rem as she stood there. Without even needing to turn around, a beautiful woman who made a vivid impression in red stepped out beside her, Priscilla, wearing a luxurious dress and sparingly exposing her violent beauty. Rem had not held a conversation with her since the latter had saved her life from Arakia's rampage, during her assault on the city hall. So with her suddenly speaking to Rem, her confusion and bewilderment grew stronger. Rem, thank you very much. Priscilla, what is this gratitude in regard to? Rem, for what happened yesterday at the city hall. I was saved from that woman, Arakia. Not only me, but everyone else as well. Thanks to you. Priscilla, I saved many lives, you say? In my opinion, the credit for saving their lives goes to you. You used your talent and skills to save those who were dying. It was not my intention to show mercy to them. Do not take the liberty of twisting mine actions. Rem, I didn't mean to. Rem thought to herself as she tried to say that she did not. It was a bad habit to prematurely judge the thoughts and actions of others and their intentions, and try to fit them into one's own mold. She remembered many times of such a thing, not pertaining only to Priscilla. Considering her lost memories, she had only been alive for about 2 weeks. Rem. Priscilla, so, you will not state anything in riposte? That too, is an extremely dull decision, is it not? Rem, I'm sorry. I thought you were right. But I guess you can't twist the fact that I'm grateful to you, either? Priscilla, ho? Speaking with interest, Priscilla pulled out a fan from her cleavage. Then opening it with a rapport, she hid her own shapely lips. However, in her unconcealed eyes, there was a light of pleasure and opportunity that could not be concealed. Priscilla, I had heard that you had lost yourself, but... How dare you speak back to me? Rem, lost myself isn't quite the right expression. Just because I can't remember, doesn't mean it's gone. Placing a hand on her chest, Rem defended herself from Priscilla's words. If she had indeed disappeared, it would be no different from a dream unreachable by anyone. But Rem's lost memories were not gone. They were not in Rem, but in Subaru, who was desperately trying to attain them again. If what he had stated was true, she had a twin sister. She wondered if there was any trace of the person she had been before she lost her memories in that sister, or if there was any trace of her in the friends that Subaru had talked about, in the people she had not yet seen. If Rem could be satisfied with the fact that everything in her was gone, and that everything was building up from where there was nothing, then... Rem, were I able to do that, my heart wouldn't be aching so much. Priscilla. Rem, all the time, every second, I'm reminded of it. Every time I look into his eyes, I know I'm betraying his expectations. Of course, Subaru probably did not mean to do that. The stench was so thick and intense to the point it was difficult to even regard him, and whenever she peeked at it, his face was always desperate. And that desperation was directed at the version of herself that had disappeared, not the Rem that remained. Rem, how selfish of me. I'm disgusted with myself. So she could not tell him that she was relieved to be apart. She found it difficult to tell him, who wished to not be separated from her. And not only was she relieved, but also had this disgusting feeling. Priscilla, what had you stated to be your name? Rem, eh? Priscilla, your name. Surely you shall not tell me you have likewise lost your name? But then again, you are not nameless, you are certainly called by your name. I am quite certain it is. Priscilla raised her gaze slightly, searching the void for an answer to her question. Perhaps she would remember Rem's name. Even in the short time she had been present here, Rem could sense that she was a very intelligent person. At the same time, she was also a very mean person. Hence, Rem, it's Rem. And before Priscilla could say the wrong name on purpose, Rem said it herself. Even though her memories had vanished, and there was no sign of them returning, and even though she was separated from the people who knew her in the past, at least the name she had been called and recognized for the past 2 weeks was real. Priscilla, interesting. Priscilla muttered shortly after hearing that answer. She then closed her fan with a snap, and lifted Rem's chin with the tip of the closed fan ever so gently. Pierced by the crimson eyes up in front of her, Rem's throat was scorched by that heated gaze. But even though she was unable to word it, she stared back with intent in her eyes. Priscilla, Rem, I shall be keeping you by my side for a while. Rem, by your side? Priscilla, you may have the background and ambition, but not the ability. Your ugly healing magic shall be rehabilitated by me in moderation. Then it shall become something you may lay your eyes upon. Rem. You're going to teach me how to heal? Priscilla, nonsense. I hold no background in the healing arts. I only have an eye for beauty. I shall know what you are lacking when I see it. Rem. The answer that came back was not the one Rem had expected, but in a way it was either more than she expected, or very far from what she had expected. However, if Rem's only current skill, the healing magic able to heal others, could then be utilized, it was worth relying on Priscilla's words. If only she had more power, she thought. It was something she regretted not having. Rem, but, Priscilla-san, aren't you returning to your base? Priscilla, I shan't. I have also attached that elf fellow to Abel. It shall not be long before we see whether the conditions I have imposed on him can be met. I shall wait here. There will be some inconveniences, but I shall summon Schult to resolve them. Rem, ha, ha. Rem was unaware of what was tugging at her heartstrings, but Priscilla had settled on staying in Quarrel. Either way, it would be helpful to have her as a mentor. There were still many people in this city in need of Rem's poor healing skills. She could not leave the city without tending to them. Priscilla, now, with that decided, prepare a room for me. I shall allow Schult to take care of the details, but we require a place to spend today and tomorrow. Rem, I understand. I'll have it ready for you right away. Priscilla gave orders as if she owned the place, but Rem didn't feel like disobeying, so she obeyed. Priscilla had a way of making others obey her, but Rem herself had no resistance to being ordered to do what needed to be done. With a flurry of steps and a cane in hand, she returned to the city hall and thought that she should consult with Zikr about Priscilla's stay and the arrangements for her room. The people of Shudrak were not used to city life as well, and so she felt bad that she had to rely on Zikr for so many things. However, he was a man who would refuse or label something impossible, if solicited by a woman. Ah, there you are. Rem, Yudhakata-chan. Inside the city hall, on the way to the office where Zikr would be, she ran into a girl looking out of the corridor window, Yudhakata. Upon noticing Rem's appearance, Yudhakata smiled at her with a friendly face. Rem could not avoid smiling in return, her cheeks relaxing. Rem, I'm sorry, I've been kinda busy. Yudhakata, you is fine, composed even. I'm more worried about TAA. She's been wobbling around. Rem, Tarita-san, right. Newly appointed as chieftain, Tarita was accompanying Subaru and the others on their journey. Even in the eyes of the young Yudhakata, Tarita must have looked shaky, almost crushed by her sudden assignment. Still, it was admirable of her to seek her own way out and take the first step to gain confidence. While Rem had remained crouched in place, whining that she had nothing, the people around her continued to move forward, leaving Rem behind. She definitely did not wish to curse the world with her whining and drag everyone down alongside her. Rem, Tarita-san will be fine. So, Yudhakata-chan, the others, and I, will protect the place to which Tarita-san will come back. Yudhakata, got it. You're dependable. Rem, I wonder. When you say that, I feel a little more confident. Rem's cheeks relaxed slightly at Yudhakata's unpretentious words. Then suddenly, Rem noticed something strange and looked around. Yudhakata, standing in the aisle looking out the window, was alone. And there was no one else around. It still seemed like an inappropriate environment for a child to be walking around on their lonesome, but she wasn't trying to blame her for not being with an adult. Rather, it was something more fundamental. Rem, are you alone, Yudhakata-chan? Where's Louis-chan? Although she had been left to her own devices for a long time, Louis had grown quite fond of Yudhakata. They were friends of the same age and seemed to have a comfortable relationship, which was why Yudhakata being alone was such a conspicuously uncomfortable situation. Of course, she was probably overthinking this, but... Rem, isn't Louis-chan with you? Yudhakata, yes. Lou already left. Rem, eh? Rem went stiff upon hearing Yudhakata's words, the former's head tilted back. Stopping her thoughts from going blank for a moment, Rem did her best to use her brain to ascertain the truth of Yudhakata's words. Louis was not with her, so the meaning of Yudhakata's words was... Rem, Louis-chan's. Yudhakata, she's gone. You helped her get into the carriage. And the brave and courageous Shudrak girl puffed up her chest with pride, speaking those words to Rem, in a completely nonchalant manner. Chapter 34, A Quarrel in the Carriage. The carriage moved slowly, but not to the extent of being idyllic, down the road. The chestnut-haired Gale Windhorse, swinging its huge body with a delicacy that belied its sturdy figure, was carefully escorting the carriage carrying Subaru and the others. Subaru, how predictable, we've got Lady, who isn't quite lady. Given it's Zickersan's beloved horse. Subaru recalled this as he looked at the Gale Windhorse as it dashed, its master in the forefront of his mind. Zicker's beloved horse, which they had borrowed, was named Lady, a name very close in meaning to lady, and a surprisingly faithful one for a person dubbed the Womanizer. In any case, thanks to Lighty's efforts, the group's journey to the demon city of Chaos Flame had been progressing smoothly. If things continued at this pace, they expected to arrive in about 4 days. Subaru, but it's not just about arriving, you know. Not only the reputation of member of the 9 Divine Generals we're going to meet, but the sound of the name Demon City is also scary in the first place. The Demon City, a city bearing the word demon in its name. It seemed unlikely to be a simple matter. He'd gotten word that it was a melting pot of a diverse mix of races, but was that enough to crown the city with the words chaos and demon? With the fact that one of the 9 Divine Generals, someone who often caused a rebellion, was in charge included, there was the impression that they were only trying to urge on Subaru's sense of danger. That was one of the reasons why he had not brought Rem along. Subaru, I wonder what kind of chaos awaits us. Al, as chaotic as it sounds, it still confuses the hell out of me. That outfit and the bro I know don't seem to go together quite as well, and it's starting to look like a bug. Subaru, you're still saying these things? Subaru, who was in the front seat of the spacious carriage, looking out the window at the back of Lighty's nimble running figure, turned around while gently using his hand to stroke his long black hair blowing in the wind. Raising his chin as if he were exasperated was Al, sitting at the back of the carriage. Al was occupying a 3-seater in a slouched posture. He then hooked his fingers on the chin of his helmet, making his raised head look down. Al, you're definitely doing that on purpose. With a bitter tone, he blurted that out due to Subaru's behavior. Subaru shrugged his shoulders, feeling disappointed at Al's strong rejection. Surprisingly, Al was the second person after Rem to criticize Subaru's cross-dressing. Abel, the Shudrax, the O'Connell siblings, and Zicker, all of them naturally indulged him once they accepted it, but Al kept harping on it. Subaru, the same mouth that had said they were going to support me, is now complaining. So that whole mysterious conversation was a lie? Al, it was no lie, and my decision to help you's genuine, bro, but that's not the same thing as this. I'm sure you'll be able to understand why I ain't happy with your cross-dressing, bro. Subaru, if you're on my side, you'll have to accept me as I am in the meanwhile. Al, you sure you want to keep being called bro when in that disguise? For real? Once someone reiterated this to him, even Subaru would feel that it was a bit unreasonable. Natsuki Subaru and Natsumi Schwartz, albeit the two names may share the same body, there was a clear difference in the way they were and the way they stood. In other words, Natsuki Subaru was his grounded self, and Natsumi Schwartz was an idealized image of his own fickle self. Subaru, of course, I don't want to be a woman. It's about self-confidence and all that. Al, I didn't ask. Despite being rebuffed out loud, Subaru looked down at his body and changed his perception. Natsumi Schwartz had now been recreated with the use of a wig and makeup, but unlike the time he was posing as a dancer, his role in the future would be more intellectual. Therefore, the costumes and makeup had been put together to reflect that impression. The red-colored outfit with a collar was a one-of-a-kind design based on the uniforms of the Valachian Empire's officers. The one worn by Zicker had a similar design. He didn't normally wear a cloak unless necessary, as it inhibited his movement, but he was proud of the fact that this bluff was working. Further down were pants, on his feet were tough boots, and on his head lay a military cap with a bird's feather on it. This was the complete picture of the female military strategist, Natsumi Schwartz. Subaru, well, I guess I'm more of a female soldier than a female strategist. When you think of women in military attire, you'd expect them to be dressed as men, right? Al, even when I'm literally looking at the fact of you, bro, cross-dressing as a woman who's cross-dressed as a man, my confusion is only getting worse. Subaru, I don't want to stand out, so it's put together in the Empire style. It's a male look, so I drew a bit of inspiration from Crush-san's taste. Al, I ain't sure if the Duchess will be pleased with that expression, saying that you got a little inspiration from your previous encounters with her. Am I the only one who thinks that this is strange? What do you think about it, Emperor-san? Al raised his right arm in exasperation to Subaru, who explained the concept. With that, Al then turned his lifted right arm to the front, pointing at the figure in front of him. In the middle seat of the carriage, or in other words, the position where he was endlessly sandwiched in between their conversation, was Abel, looking out the window with a grim expression. He seemed to be pondering something with a serious look on his face. He raised his eyebrows at the imprudent name Al used, and without turning around, he coldly voiced a clown. Abel, I do not have the recollection of allowing you to call me that. Know that one careless word can jeopardize the very existence of the Empire. If you do not, you shall lose more than just your other arm. Al, ugh, gimme a break. I've gotten used to it, but an inconvenience is an inconvenience. If I lose another one, it'll be more than just an inconvenience. Abel, then you should bear that in mind. Al, hey, the Imperial way's not even funny. It's hard for comedians like ourselves. Right, bro? Subaru, I don't want to be asked for my agreement. The atmosphere was tense, with no room for jokes or light-hearted conversation, but Subaru had no intention of criticizing the Empire, like saying that it was a problem of the country's character. At most, as an individual, he found Abel to be difficult to get along with. The answer itself was light-hearted, so it was a complaint that he had never felt on the surface. Of course, when it came to issues of beliefs and values, it did not stop at that. Al, so, what do you think of bro's outfit, Abel-chan? Abel. For a moment, Abel's brow creased at the new name. Subaru was surprised by Al's daredevil approach, but after a few moments of silence, Abel snorted roughly at the insolence and disregarded him. Was it better than being called Emperor-san? Unsure of Abel's thoughts on this, Subaru suppressed an inner chill with a sigh. In the meantime, Abel looked at Subaru again to answer Al's question. Abel, yes, it is a ridiculous look, but I do not care as long as it pays off. You should separate your abilities from your hobbies. Subaru, don't stab me in the back under the guise of backing me up. How many times do I have to tell you that it's not a hobby, but a necessity? Do you think I dress like a woman because I like it? Abel. Subaru, don't just say nothing. Because of the suggestive silence, Subaru's suspicions were unfairly intensified. Naturally, this was a very unpleasant understanding for Subaru. He did not want to dress as a woman at all, if it was not required. However, if there was even the slightest possibility that it would resolve the situation, he would not exclude cross-dressing as an option. That was all there was to it. Subaru, everyone has a proper argument prepared by them, listen. Al, you said you were armed with an argument. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's a cliché. The emperor who was expelled from the throne recruits allies to regain it. In that case, it's only natural that there's a position for a mysterious woman to accompany him. Subaru, yeah, that's right. Like a strategist or a mage. And usually in those stories they have that sort of position be the heroine. I'm not the heroine. Al, don't get mad even though you said it yourself. You'd surprise everyone, not to mention me. Subaru was indignant, but his intentions were not understood by anyone other than his fellow countryman Al. In the first place, there were many phrases that would not be understood even in their homeland. Al's knowledge was quite close to Subaru's, as evidenced by the fact that he could even employ it. Subaru, I never asked about which time period he came from or anything in depth. So far, even though Subaru had shared the information that he and Al were from the same place, they had never talked about which period they had arrived from. Al had once told Subaru that he had been summoned to this other world nearly 20 years ago. Furthermore, his experience had been so terrible that he had even lost one of his arms. Though the confession itself had been done without a care, the reality of it was not so frivolous. The anguish and despair that Al had endured must have been a constant part of his everyday life. Al was a man who had been tormented by the harshness of this other world much more than Subaru. Now that he was speaking about it, he realized how blessed he was compared to him. At the same time, he was wondering what the difference was between himself and Al. Because of this fear, Subaru had not tried to have deep conversations with Al, and Al had not tried to go any further either. However, considering the language used and the subcultural topics that they could understand, the original world where Subaru and Al lived must have been in the same time frame. If he had been summoned 20 years ago, he must have been the same age and from the same epoch. The current age difference between Subaru and Al was merely a function of the time in this other world they had been summoned to. Henceforth, despite the age difference, he and Subaru were on the same wavelength in their conversations. That seemed to be the cause of the vague tingling sensation Subaru felt when interacting with him. Al, I hate clichés. Subaru, huh? Al, a suspicious mage beside the emperor. Ain't that a cliché? What about that? Al's lighthearted comment snapped Subaru, whose thoughts had gone astray, back to reality. Blinking his eyes, Subaru nodded his head in agreement with what he called a cliché, with a yeah. Subaru, it's a cliché, indeed. A bewitching female mage seduces the emperor and slowly turns him into a puppet of her will. And then the prosperous country collapses. Abel, I shall not allow it to collapse on its own. I shall take it back no matter what. It just. Subaru, just? Abel, it was neither a mage nor a woman, but it is true that there was one dubbed the Stargazer. Subaru and Al, Stargazer? The words from Abel's mouth were met with overlapped doubts from both Subaru and Al. It was a word they had never heard before, but they thought it strange. Subaru had never heard of this word before, but strangely enough, he held an idea of the characters in his head. And once the characters fit, the role of the word also came to mind, vaguely. Subaru, maybe they're a feng shui master, or something of the sort, kinda like the position of a fortune teller? Al, it's more like a prophet, ain't it? I mean, that's what the stone tablet does in the kingdom. Subaru, yeah, the dragon history tablet, they called it. Convinced by Al's words, Subaru retrieved the knowledge of the prophetic tablet passed down in the kingdom from his head. Although Subaru hadn't laid eyes on the actual artifact, it seemed that the tablet contained information about future events that would occur in the kingdom of Lugunica, and was said to be a useful artifact that also provided solutions to said problems. However, having forecasted that the royal family of Lugunica would succumb to illness, the tablet had presented an approach for the selection of the next monarch, in other words, the royal selection, in which Amelia and Priscilla were partaking. Honestly, it was a result that made him tilt his head at the idea of being grateful to the prophecy tablet. Subaru, if it was serious about giving advice on how to save the kingdom, it would tell them how to cure or stop the disease in the first place. As he deepened his knowledge as a knight of a royal candidate, he learned that the royal family of Lugunica possessed no tyrannical behavior or imbecility, and were, at the very least, loved by their people. Many of their subjects and citizens had been saddened by their deaths, but none had been happy about it. It was still a mystery as to why the dragon history tablet had forsaken them. Subaru, if the other party's a slab of stone, it'd be a pipe dream to get any answers. Al, if they're a stone slab, then sure, but the Stargazer ain't one, right? What role did he play in the court, Abel-chan? Abel. Not too far from all of your perception. Because the power of the Stargazer was to peer into the future, to preserve the empire. Abel's answer to the question was roughly in line with the impression Subaru had gleaned from the name Stargazer. Nevertheless, there was one problem. Subaru, but they weren't able to predict things. You were driven out, after all. Abel, as I told you before. The Stargazer's power is for the preservation of the empire. It does not necessarily coincide with my safety. Subaru, that would mean that it'd be better for the empire if you were chased away. Abel, at least, I suppose that is what the Stargazer has settled upon. Abel crossed his arms quietly as he answered nonchalantly. It could be argued that the tablet and the Stargazer, two objects with similar roles, had both overlooked the plight of what should be the most noble position in their respective countries. To suspect a connection between the kingdom and the empire was tempting, however. Subaru, before that, I'm starting to feel that there's a problem with you, who got abandoned by the Prime Minister, your right-hand man, and this prophet. You sure it's okay to put you back on the Emperor's throne? Al, oi, that's too straight of a fireball, bro. Subaru, no, don't you feel concerned when hearing the situation surrounding this as well? Al, but that's it. Afro General approved of Abel-chan, didn't he? Subaru, yeah, that's right. Then I guess it's okay. With the mention of the Afro General, Zikr, Subaru was peacefully convinced. Zikr was on Abel's side, which was a relief, although it made him worry about a lot of other things. On the other hand, without Zikr, it was highly doubtful that he could have gone along with Abel, given his suspicions. Regardless of how much he wanted to get himself and Rem back to the kingdom safely, it did not mean that he did not care what happened to the empire. To be honest, Subaru held more bad memories of the empire than good ones, but there were many people he wished to see happy, including the people of Shudrak and the O'Connell siblings. Subaru, I'm starting to get pretty worried about including you in that, but... Abel, whatever you say, no matter what the Stargazer sees regarding the future, I have my answer. Subaru. Abel, if the Stargazer decides that I cannot remain on the throne, I shall not comply. If the Stargazer declares that my presence shall destroy the empire, then I shall disprove that with my own hands. Abel's declaration was a little too passionate to be casual. Abel's fervor was equal to the fervor with which he had stated he would take back his throne on numerous other occasions. This was Abel's unyielding position and his unshakable heart. Subaru did not doubt Abel's last line, because he could feel that it was not merely revenge or rebellion, but a larger and purer belief. Other than that, he really wished more of the surrounding parts could be embellished to make it believable. Ah. Guiz. Look ahead a little bit, look ahead. Subaru, Just as the conversation was coming to a close, from the front of the carriage from the coachman's bench suddenly came a boisterous voice, and Subaru and the others turned their attention to it. Medium, who was holding the reins of Reedy on the coachman's bench, was the one to raise that lively voice. It seemed she had not been allowed to take the reins during her travels together with Flop, so she had taken the initiative by speaking up, "I want to." Medium, her tall, slender frame tucked into the platform, grasped the reins in one hand while pointing to the path ahead with the other. "Medium, I see a lot of hustle and bustle up ahead. Can you see it too, Natsumi-chan?" "Subaru, barely looks like anything, I guess." Subaru leaned out of the window of the carriage, but he could not be sure of what Medium had been talking about with hustle and bustle. Maybe it was the angle, or maybe it was just his eyesight. Subaru had believed to be in possession of good eyesight, but in this other world, that was no longer the case. People from this other world had eyesight of a different level. Emilia probably had a visual acuity of 5.0. Subaru had the impression he had seen a TV program in his original world that said people in Africa had exceptionally good eyesight. In this regard, Tarita's eyesight, as one of the Amazonesses of this other world, was quite impressive. "Subaru, so, what about you, Tarita-san? Can you see it?" "Tarita, wait a minute, that's..." She answered Subaru's call, but Tarita was neither inside the carriage nor on the driver's platform. Leaning out of the window, Subaru beckoned her. She was atop of Carriage, of all places. Positioned on the roof of the moving carriage, from which Tarita served as a sentinel keeping watch of all directions. "Al, is it just me, or is it kinda uncomfortable to have people on the roof like that?" "Subaru, I don't know about Abel, but I'm used to it with our Garfield." Al mentioned Tarita, whose task lay atop the horse-drawn carriage, but Subaru, familiar with Garfield who wished to play the same role, was not particularly uncomfortable with it. In fact, in this other world, it was essential to be vigilant while on the move, so it will have proper effects rather than just a Chuyuni thing. The fact that Abel did not halt her was proof of that. "Tarita, looks like Imperial soldiers are gathering. Looks like an ox cart or something is being stopped in front of us." "Subaru, that's..." "Abel, a checkpoint." So muttered Abel to himself after receiving Tarita's report and understanding the situation. The checkpoint that came to Subaru's mind was the one at the main gate of Quarrel. However, the fact that the checkpoint was not at the entrance to the city, but in the middle of the road, seized his attention. It was natural to check the comings and goings in a city, but the impression given by checkpoints on the roads was different, in that they were in response to some kind of anomaly. In short, they were most likely looking for something specific. "Subaru, no way, us? Arakia got away from us, and that's how things got spread?" "Abel, of course, it is inevitable that information shall eventually leak out from Arakia. But I do not believe it can move as quickly and accurately as this. In addition, the Demon City is in the opposite direction of the Imperial capital. Subaru, so location-wise, they shouldn't have any reported information?" "Abel, yes. Although there is the matter of her companion, is there not?" With his arms crossed, Abel was concerned not about Arakia, but about her companion. Arakia's companion was the person who had retrieved her from Quarrel. "Al, the guy who dragged Lil Miss Arakia away? He's the kinda guy who'd fearlessly ride into the middle of enemy territory in the situation. He's probably a sharp and able person." "Subaru, a sharp and able person." Abel's concern and Al's point of view made Subaru imagine something unpleasant. As far as the Imperial soldiers in the fortified city were concerned, Subaru had an idea of who the sharp ones were. And amongst the Imperial soldiers who had surrendered after the fall of the city hall, the object of Subaru's fear could not be counted. Perhaps they had mixed amidst the soldiers who had abandoned the city and fled. "Subaru, no way." He did not want to think that it was that man who had taken Arakia away, no matter how much he wanted to. He wished that the fate of their relationship would not grow any deeper. "Subaru. Right now, we need to focus on the problem at hand. What do we do? Do you think we can bypass it?" "Tarita, right now, I don't think they're even aware of us yet." Medium and Tarita, two people with excellent eyesight, had been the first to spot them. Before the soldiers ahead of them noticed, they could go off the road and avoid the checkpoint. If nothing about them was found to be amiss, they could pass through brazenly, but if they had contraband or something, they would have no choice but to evade. But... "Abel, hold it, do not take detours." "Subaru, And just before he gave the order to get off the road, Abel, of all people, stopped him. In response to his call for restraint, Subaru turned his suspicious eyes to Abel. "Subaru, you tell us to not take a detour, what else do you want us to do? If they find you, we're in trouble." "Abel, I want to know their goal. If the fall of Quarrel is the matter, the developments would be too swift. If it is my whereabouts, I would like to learn what the soldiers say they are searching for." "Subaru, so, what's going to happen when they find you? You'll poke the beehive and we'll end up getting into a raging car chase. Of course, the possibility existed that they would be caught on the spot. Of the 5 people in the horse-drawn carriage, only 3, excluding Subaru and Abel, were capable of fighting, but their total strength was not much different from that of the dancing troupe that had ridden into Quarrel. In the event that they were to escape in their carriage, it would be extremely difficult to shake the enemy off on the wide-open road. Subaru, the conditions are too bad. Or do you have a better plan? Abel, there is. You. Subaru, hey? Subaru was stunned as he weighed the risks and rewards and decided that the odds were not in his favor. They were supposed to be talking about the odds of taking on a dangerous bet right now. Subaru, what do you mean, you want me to be the one to appear out there? Abel, there is already a precedent for this in the fortified city. The carriage is disguised so as not to be recognizable as one from the army. It shall be as we agreed upon in advance. Subaru, wasn't that just preparation for small talk while on the road? Abel's brash statement had been a setup for making conversation with other vendors and travelers along the way, not a premise to fool the carefully watching Imperial soldiers. Yet, Abel turned a deaf ear to Subaru's complaints that sounded like screams. Abel, I shall hide at the bottom of the wagon. You get the soldiers to talk. Subaru, wait, are you serious? Abel, do not allow the soldiers to look into the bottom of the carriage. You too might lose your life. Subaru, I don't know why you're so high and mighty. With that said, Abel stood up from his seat and put his hands on the floor. There was a slight gap in the floor underneath the seats, and the floorboards flipped up, allowing him to descend onto the bottom part of the carriage. The horse-drawn carriage had been originally intended to be pulled by the gale wind horse of General Second-Class Sicker. The exterior of the carriage had been replaced to disguise the fact that it was related to the Imperial Army, but this did not mean that its functions had been disabled. The carriage, designed to be used by people of high rank, had a mechanism which allowed the floorboards to come off, so that they could hide in case of emergency. Subaru was sure the one who had crafted this horse-driven carriage had never imagined that it would be the Emperor who would be hiding there. Anyway, Abel quickly lifted the floorboards and twisted his thin body into the narrow space. In earnest, he had entrusted the rest to Subaru. It was not so much daring as it was pride. Al, good grief, Abel-chan's so pushy. Nevertheless, we got no choice but to do it, bro. That was Al's comment about Abel, who had only made his point and quickly made his retreated. His words after that were based on the reaction of the checkpoint in the carriage's path. It seemed that their presence had become known to their side as well. Tarita, Natsumi, they're aware of our presence. Medium, then, it looks like we have no choice but to go. Alright, good luck, Natsumi-chan. Courteously, Tarita's and Medium's shouts eliminated the option of a detour. Changing direction at this point would be like advertising it's inconvenient to have the carriage inspected. Therefore, they had no option but to proceed as His Majesty, the Emperor, desired, even though it was annoying. Al, bro, you ready? Subaru, yeah, I know right. It's nice to meet you. Al, well, that was some switch. Delivering a light tap to his cheeks with both hands, Subaru flipped a switch inside himself. If he slapped his cheeks hard enough, his makeup would be ruined. If he scratched his head, his hair would get messy. If he did not shelve his inner irritation, his words would become rough. He could not fool the Imperial soldiers with that. He had to play the part that was required of him, and accomplish the duty that was expected of him. That was the first step for Natsuki Subaru to regain the lost trust. Subaru, oh, thank you for your service, gentlemen of the army. What can I do for you? Subaru said, as he leaned out of the window, smiling as dainty and charming as he could, and waved cheerfully to the Imperial soldiers who stopped the carriage. The Imperial soldiers who had halted the carriage did not take the presence of a carriage carrying only Al, in addition to the 3 women, Medium, Tarita, and Subaru, seriously. What they had requested was the identity of the group and the purpose of the trip. As they had agreed upon beforehand, Al and Medium had been hired to guard Subaru, the daughter of a lower-ranking count, and Tarita was to be Subaru's servant. Before leaving Quarrel, Tarita's style had undergone trial and error, and been changed from the Amazoness style that was instantly recognizable as that of the people of Shudrak. Currently, Tarita was dressed in the style of a male butler, which was Subaru's preference. Al given rave reviews, his words being bros dressed as a woman who's dressed as a man, and Tarita-chan's dressed as a man. I don't understand anything anymore. Anyway, the Imperial soldiers at the checkpoint had not been suspicious of Subaru and the others' kind of behavior. Only when being told that their destination was Chaos Flame, did they display a meaningful hesitation, saying, well, that's. Even among them, the Demon City's impression seemed to be poor. Soldier, I wouldn't really recommend visiting the Demon City, young lady. Subaru, even if you say so, I'm afraid my father will be angry with me. Even though I'm a noble, it's not a luxury the family of a lowly count can afford. Soldier, I see. Well, you seem to have a good head on your shoulders, so I guess there's nothing to worry about. Subaru, oh my, you flatter me. Smiling with the back of his hand over his mouth, Subaru elegantly sidestepped the soldier's suspicion. In general, there seemed to be no problem in getting through the checkpoint. The only thing left to do was... Subaru, well, there appears to be quite strict security. Has something happened? Soldier, oh no, it's nothing serious. There's deserters from a recent skirmish up north near Budheim, so we're looking for them. And we're also looking for a wanted criminal. Subaru, wanted, is it? Careful not to let his voice waver, Subaru frowned at the sound of that. Fortunately, the soldier did not seem to notice Subaru's surging inner thoughts and nodded, yeah. Soldier, there's talk of a man wanted in the imperial capital being sighted around here. It's said that he's about 50 years old and has blue hair. Do you have any knowledge of him? Subaru. No, I'm afraid not. But to have deserters from the imperial soldiers, who are renowned for their strength, makes me worry that the mantra of the empire is being disturbed. Medium, it's okay, Natsumi-chan. We're here for you, so don't worry. Let's hold our chests out strong. Subaru, well, that's reassuring, Medium-san. Oh ho ho. Subaru had not meant for that to happen, but Medium's blunt words made the imperial soldiers lose their composure. There was the possibility that by probing into it, they would become suspicious, but it seemed that they had been successful in evading that worry. Toretta, too, was silent and played the role of a butler who did not interrupt her master unnecessarily. She had a tendency to be shy, though, so the silence may just have been natural. And, except for the women, the most worrying person was Al and his suspicious appearance. Al, my oh my, thank you soldiers for all your hard work. It's thanks to your hard work that a half-wit like me's allowed to work so lazily. Soldier, we are only working for the well-being of the empire. Definitely not for someone as weak and lazy as you. Al, I know. I understand where I stand. Al, too, had perfectly handled the disrespectful move from the imperial soldiers, having been met with scorn. It was hard to discern if he was acting or not, but he had a good point. The unnaturalness of hiring the one-armed Al as a bodyguard was also quashed ahead of time by Subaru. Subaru, it wouldn't look good if I didn't say I hired him as a bodyguard, would it? With his arm like that, I'm sure he used to be a soldier serving this country as well. Soldier, if he resigned his position because of his injuries, there's nothing for us to say. Just be very careful, because it doesn't mean that he doesn't have evil intentions. Treating Al's arm as a strength rather than a weakness reinforced the rationale for his frivolous attitude. The imperial soldiers, with their aversion to weakness and their respect for the strong, were also considerate of those who had retired from the front lines due to unhealable wounds. With that, they had been capable of getting through the checkpoint without any major problems. Medium, well, Natsumi-chan was really good. I'm so impressed with you. Medium praised him as he waved from the platform towards the imperial soldiers in the distance. At her words, Subaru shook his head with a, no. Subaru, it's no big deal. If the checkpoint had been set up for a more pressing reason, we would have had to use a lot of finesse to get through. In that sense, I guess you could say we were lucky. Medium, yeah? Then I guess so. I'm often told I'm lucky by Big Bro too. I feel that way too. Subaru, both Medium-san and Flop-san are naturals at finding happiness, aren't they? Subaru smiled at Medium's pleasant answer as he put his hand on his cheek. At this exchange between Subaru and Medium, Toretta, who was sitting in the front seat of the carriage with an exhausted look on her face, turned around. Subaru tilted his head at her meaningful gaze, as she was relieved of her tension and patted her chest in relief. Subaru, what's the matter, Toretta-san? Is there a problem? Toretta, no, I don't have a problem, but... Natsumi, how can you be so bold? I've been wondering that ever since you planned to dress as a dancer. Subaru, yeah, I guess. Toretta had found Subaru's transformation into a woman hard to get used to. The time Toretta had spent with him in women's clothing was the same as Abel's, ever since they had entered Quarrel. And yet, it seemed strange to her. In a way, Abel and Flop had been able to pull it off with zero effort. Bianca and Flora were able to overcome all problems with their natural good looks. Of course, Subaru's character, Natsumi Schwartz, had no such sort of grounding. There was a quality that could not be disguised by clothes or makeup alone, and it was a problem that inevitably arose for those who were not in its possession. It took effort to compensate for that. Subaru, so, I just tried my hardest, that's all. The perfection of Natsume Schwartz was part of the results of humanity's accumulated quest for beauty. Were it not for these pioneers, Subaru's cross-dressing would not have been accepted even at a school festival. Behind its success were the forefathers' many wishes and efforts. Because of this, he also had a sense of being unable to disregard what had been established. Terita, I'm jealous of your confidence. I don't have that. Subaru, confidence. What I have is trust in Natsume Schwartz, but confidence is a different thing. Terita, Al, oi, bro, don't do that. You'll confuse Terita-chan. That level of thinking's a bit too much for us to follow, you know? In place of Terita, her flickering to and fro, Al interrupted Subaru's self-assertion. He was unaware that he was talking about something so difficult that it would confuse the two of them. He had merely stated that even though it was difficult to believe in himself, he could believe in the ideal image he had created in his mind, one that he could believe in. Subaru, I always envision myself as the best version I can be, you know? Terita, I find that a difficult concept to understand. Subaru, but I'd recommend trying that mindset, you know? Comparing yourself to the person you admire can be painful, but you can envision your ideal self. Terita. Terita's eyes widened slightly as Subaru put his hand on his chest and spoke. Something about it seemed to resonate with her in no small manner. Terita, envision your ideal self. Resonated such that it seemed that she had quietly stored it within her heart. Al, deserters aside, dunno what the wanted guy did. Even if it's a big help that Abel-chan's story hasn't spread, that was a pretty big deal. Subaru, well. A blue-haired man of about 50 years of age, I'm sure there are many gentlemen who fit that description, and I can even think of one in my memory, you know? In his original world, blue hair did not occur naturally, but in this other world, it could be seen as a not-so-uncommon hair color, ram at the forefront. The wanted man at the checkpoint earlier also fit that description, as did the heavy drinker who had once helped him in the city of Daryl. The mercenary named Rowan also possessed said characteristic. Unfortunately, Rowan's demonstration of his abilities had been foiled by Todd's surprise attack, but Subaru believed that he would have been quite good were he able to do battle in a proper fashion. However, Subaru did not believe him to be a wanted man, one that would require the mobilization of so many Imperial soldiers. So it was possibly a matter of someone else, with similar characters, that was wanted. Subaru, in any case, Abel's situation hasn't been reported to the ordinary soldiers yet. As long as there's no disorder in the Imperial capital, it seems safe to assume that a body double's acting as Emperor. Al, dunno if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Honestly, I think it would have been more convenient for us if the Emperor had been absent and that there was a lot of commotion. Subaru, I feel like it has its advantages and disadvantages. Setting handling things if he's discovered aside, the gravity of finding Abel remains unchanged. If the Emperor's absence were to become public and the Empire thrown into turmoil, it was currently unknown whether Subaru and the others would be able to handle it effectively. At the very least, Abel's perception was that they were still lacking in strength to claim the throne, and Subaru was of the same opinion. However, the insistence of going through the checkpoint had made him very nervous. Al, at any rate, now that we've escaped the checkpoint, let's get Abel-chan out of there. Subaru, right. Besides, I want to complain about something. Nodding at Al's suggestion, Subaru crossed his arms over his fake cleavage to assert his indignation. The reason for Subaru's indignation was, of course, the unreasonable reason given so they would go through the checkpoint. But beyond that, it was the reckless flailing by Abel during the checkpoint. While talking with the soldiers, noises had echoed from the bottom of the carriage several times, which had been disguised with great difficulty. Ultimately, it was settled that Subaru, posing as a woman, had a stomachache, saying, "It's not easy being a lowly count." But it was an outrage that damaged the reputation of the elegant Natsume Schwartz. Subaru, it seems that His Majesty, the Emperor, isn't fully aware of his position. Al, oh bro, you seem angry. Well, guess I should be mad too. Al agreed with Subaru, who was eager to complain to His Majesty, the reckless Emperor. Then Al flipped up the floorboard, and Subaru peered into the bottom of the rocking carriage to complain bitterly to the face that appeared. Subaru, hey, Abel, what's going on? You have no idea how hard it was for us to cover up for you after you did that. You. Subaru, ooh-ya hook. Subaru's, or at least I think, which was about to come with his candid advice, was swallowed by a shout, causing him to jump away, landing in Terita's arms. All of a sudden, Terita was holding him in a bridal carry, but he did not have the leisure to admire her core strength. What appeared was not Abel breaking into laughter but a young girl of golden hair. The girl was more than familiar to him, and he had more than enough bad memories of her. It was Lewis, a girl who should not be present. Louis Arnab, an irregular representative in the Empire, burst cheerfully out from under the floor. Subaru, www. Louis, AAUU? Subaru, why? Why are you in the carriage? Apparently, she had been hiding under the floor all along. I cannot believe no one had noticed it until now. It was probably the work of Utakata. His eyes going wide, Subaru's voice quivered. Following up Subaru's question was Abel, his figure emerging from the bottom after Louis. He patted the dust off his dirty traveling clothes and hand-combed his wildly disheveled sable hair. Then, regarding Louis leaning in towards Subaru, the latter still being held up by Tarita. Abel, It appears that she missed you a lot. So much that rather than being with Utakata or your woman, she opted to be with you. Subaru, what are you so composed for? Were you okay with being under the floor with her? Abel, how could it have been fine? She was unnecessarily rampaging at the bottom, and even I was chilled by it. I mulled over about how it could be explained away once the soldiers discovered me due to her. Shutting the floorboards and returning to his seat, Abel's words made sense to Subaru. It seemed that the cause of the commotion that had distracted Subaru's mind so much during the Imperial soldiers' inspection of the carriage was none other than Louis. Perhaps Louis, hiding in the bottom of the carriage as she was, had jostled with Abel, who had come down there to hide. He did not seem to have any talent for caring for children, although it was unclear how Abel was treating Louis. Subaru, then, what the hell can you do? Abel, you have been speaking disgracefully about me to no end, but what are you planning to do with that thing? Subaru, what should I do? Abel, I am telling you now, that there is absolutely no way we can turn back anymore. That checkpoint in time both, shall not allow it. Al, well, Abel-chan's right about that, ain't he? Touching the clasp of his helmet, Al nodded his head in agreement with Abel's words. Meanwhile, an anguished Subaru had Tarita put him down on the floor, then held down Louis's forehead as she giggled with AUU, and snuggled up against him. Subaru, why did this happen? Confusion and bewilderment swirled within his head. On the other hand, there was a part of him that felt relieved that Louis was here, that he did not have to deal with this uncertainty being beside Rem, who had been left behind in Quarrel. However, the fact that Subaru had been followed did not make him any less cautious about Louis's true nature and what could be in her plans. Tarita, Subaru, there's nothing we can do, we'll take Louis with us. Subaru, even you are saying that, Tarita-san? Tarita, Abel's right, we don't have a choice but to keep going now. But we also can't leave Louis behind. I know that you and Louis have a complicated relationship. Subaru. Looking at Subaru and Louis alternately, Tarita timidly offered a neutral opinion. In addition to their mission to infiltrate Quarrel, they had also spent time together in the people of Shudrak's settlement. The majority of the Shudrakian, though not as much as Rem, were aware of Subaru's wariness and hostility towards Louis and her existence. Even with that in mind, Tarita had stated that leaving Louis behind was not an option. And, much to his own chagrin, Subaru agreed with her. Subaru, we can't just leave her here and let her cause trouble for people who don't know anything about her. Louis, you? Inclining her neck, Louis looked clueless. As things stood right now, ever since they had been sent to Wallachia, Louis had never shown her true face as the vicious Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. But that did not mean it would not happen in the future, and Subaru would be responsible for any damage that may occur once her true nature surfaced. Subaru had enough conviction that she was dangerous and countless opportunities to preempt a lot of damage from being done. That was exactly why he felt he should strangle her thin neck this very moment and sever her future. With that and that alone, many seeds of anxiety would wither and die without sprouting. And yet... Subaru. Al, oh man. I don't know what's going on here, but that lil girl's fond of you, bro, right? I'm sure you understand that she might slow us down in the future, but we'll have to consider how to use that too. Subaru, Al. While saying this, Al tried to help the anguished Subaru reach a decision. Walking over toward Louis standing beside Subaru, he took some steps upon the floor of the horse-drawn carriage with a casual gait. Then, trying to stroke the girl's blonde head gently. Al, maybe with a child it'll be easier to have them look away in case there's another checkpoint like that. Traveling with a child ain't so bad after all. Ouch. Louis, gawk. Just as Al's hand was about to stroke her head, Louis suddenly bared her fangs, literally. Louis opened her mouth wide and chomped at Al's outstretched hand as hard as she could. With a scream, Al pulled his hand away and Louis hid behind Subaru, snarling like an animal. It was an ingrateful act, like an unwanted stray cat biting the person who had tried to feed it. Al, whoa, that shit really hurt. I tried to help you out, but that was wrong. Subaru, why you've done it, haven't you? I knew it was your style to prey on others like that. Lewis, you. A. You. Subaru, I can't understand you with your us and us. Lewis was clinging to Subaru's waist, shaking her head. Subaru was struggling to pull her off, but the pressure was too tight for him to wriggle free. Luckily, Subaru knew Al's name and who he was, and Al himself did not appear to have lost himself due to having his memory snatched away. But the damage was yet to be confirmed. Tarita, please calm down. Subaru, Hyan. Lewis, you. Once Subaru and Al began raising a ruckus, Lewis started screaming like a child with a tantrum. To interrupt them, Tarita had intervened by raising her voice. Putting her hands under Lewis's arms, she picked up the child, shooting Subaru and Al both with a potent gaze, her eyes like those of her sisters, conveying a strong impression. Tarita, you're a grown man and you're acting like a child. Even more, why don't you behave like a calm adult? The little ones will mimic you. Subaru, bu but, Tarita-san, the girls. Tarita, no buts, Natsumi. I know your relationship with this girl is complicated. But even if that's the case, what are you going to accomplish by making a scene? He was reprimanded directly, and the simplicity of the reprimand was the most effective reply for Subaru. How many could win against the argument that they had been acting immature towards a child? However, such naive theory would not be applicable to a Sin Archbishop. If only she was privy to the dangers posed by Louis Arnab, Tarita would surely possess a different opinion. Then, why didn't he just tell everyone who Louis was here and now? Subaru. The black emotions echoing from within his own heart caused his throat to clog. Subaru's cheeks tensed up, and Tarita and Al reacted in a quizzical manner. In the end, the whole situation had been brought about by Subaru's vague decision-making abilities. The only way to make them understand Subaru's wariness of Louis was to disclose the fact that Louis was the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. Unlike Rem, who had lost her wariness of the witch cult along with her memories, the people in this room would be able to understand the threat. Once they realized the gravity of the situation, they would not treat Louis as the child she seemed to be. And to get rid of the disturbing threat. What could be done to get rid of her? Subaru. Louis, you? Louis tilted her head at Subaru's expression while being held by Tarita. Immediately once Subaru and Al stopped being rowdy, Louis calmed down as well. As they had found out in the time so far, Louis would only make noise if there was a lot of it in her environs. If her surroundings were quiet, Louis, by her lonesome, would not make a peep. The reason as to why Utakata was such a good match for Louis was because she was an exceptionally calm child. Perhaps this form of behavior was another way for Louis Arnab to blend in with her surroundings. That girl, so vicious and irredeemably evil, that Subaru had come into contact in the white world he had arrived at the Pleiades watchtower, was this the guise she had adopted? He was aware he must consider that way, and deal with it. And yet... Abel, I shall tell you this, our purpose here is neither pleasure nor amusement. Abel, alone in the seat, coldly said this to a Subaru still agonizing over the situation. For a moment, Subaru could not make out the true meaning of his words, but quickly realized that it was Abel's opinion on how Louis should be treated. This road trip was no game, Abel asserted. As soon as he voiced that and regarded Louis with his dark eyes, Subaru gasped at their coldness. Abel's eyes, directed towards Louis, were devoid of any warmth. This was a sign that Abel had not found any value in bestowing Louis with any consideration or warmth, and that he did not distinguish between Louis and a stone by the roadside or a wildflower. The warmth of his eyes made Subaru understand the consequences of revealing Louis's true identity. Subaru, let's take her. Abel. Immediately after making his decision, the dark eyes looking at Louis were turned to Subaru. The sharpness of his gaze felt like it was burrowing into Subaru's chest, but clenching his molars, he drove that out of his mind. Subaru, since this isn't a pleasure trip, show them you're useful. That's how it works, isn't it? Abel, yes, it is of no consequence. I had a feeling you would state such a thing. Subaru, that's a difficult evaluation to interpret. Whether it was disappointment or some other sort of emotion, it was hard to tell. Naturally, Abel wished to have his real intentions go unrevealed, and Subaru was afraid that rehashing them would lead to a different conclusion. Medium, hey, are you done with that? Louis-John, come here when they are finished talking. Tarita, is that okay? Feeling the tense atmosphere between Subaru and Abel, Tarita asked for permission to respond to Medium's voice coming from the driving platform. Abel was already unconcerned, and although he had decided to take Subaru with him, he did not want to take Louis, so he decided to take advantage of their generosity. Medium, alright, Louis-John, you want to hold the reins? Try to steer Lighty Chin. Louis, you. Toretta, let's not do that. Louis was welcomed by the two women, although there was a lot of noise coming from the driver's seat all of a sudden. Subaru was the only one who had originally been quite wary of Louis, so there was nothing surprising about their reaction. If something had to be said, however, was that Louis's disappearance may have caused Rem, who had remained in Quarrel, to panic in search of her. Abel, I do not believe that girl could have gotten into the carriage by herself. If there is someone who assisted her, that one should reveal the situation. Subaru, well, I guess that's true. Perhaps sensing the nature of Subaru's anxiety from his expression, Abel dispelled without emotion. If he was right, and Utakata had helped Louis stow away, that information would have been shared with Rem and the others back in the city. With him and Louis together, Subaru wondered if that would help with Rem's anxiety. Subaru, which would be better, her not knowing where she is or knowing where she is? Al? Of course it's safer to have her with you, bro. I mean, from what Toretta-chan said, it sounded kinda complicated. With Al having overheard his muttering, Subaru's feelings were further muddied by Al's words. The relationship between Subaru, Rem, and Louis was not as simple as it appeared. Subaru, but, that's right. With Rem's figure behind his eyelids, Subaru found an excuse within himself. Regardless of Louis's identity, Rem would be concerned for the girl. Even if he told her the truth the next time he got the chance, it would be one-sided without Louis's presence. For that reason, Louis must be kept safe. Al, bro? Subaru, no, nothing unless. Al, do me a favor please, pay as much attention to Louis as you can. Al, what's with the out-of-the-blue request, anyway? What's with that little girl? Al, who just had his hand bitten, seemed to have some difficulty with Louis, and responded to Subaru's request in a reluctant voice, questioning his intentions. It was a natural question, but for a moment, Subaru hesitated to answer. When it came to Al, he would believe Louis's identity more frankly than the others. However, how would Al act upon learning that Louis was a Sin Archbishop? Would he understand the danger and become an advisor that held the same worries as Subaru? Subaru. If she gets hurt, Rem will suffer. Please, I beg you. Al. Subaru was troubled, but, a moment later, he kept the truth to himself much like he had done with the rest of the group. Hearing Subaru's answer, Al went silent for a moment, and... Al, yeah, sure. I'm worried she might eat my remaining arm, but I'll deal with it. With that as his reply, Al settled into the front seat of the carriage as if he had heard Subaru's request. He threw his legs out lazily as he listened to the voices of the three girls bustling around the driver's platform. It could be said it was his typical way of accepting a request. Subaru? What is it? As he directed his gaze towards the back of Al's head, Subaru noticed Abel's own trained on himself. He folded his arms and slumped in his seat, his unreadable black eyes reflecting Subaru, frowning with just a hint of displeasure. This made him feel terribly anxious, so Subaru's question had ended sharply. Abel, however, gave a small and said nothing. Subaru, you still haven't thanked me for successfully getting us past the checkpoint in the first place. Taking out his frustration on Abel's attitude, Subaru stroked his long black hair and settled into a seat a little farther away from both Al and Abel. The journey to the demon city of Chaos Flame continued with a sense of uncertainty about the future. However, upon hearing the bustling voices from the driver's platform, especially that of Louis. Subaru, really, who do you think is the cause of my suffering? The sound of the horse-drawn carriage swallowed his words of complaint up entirely, and so they did not reach anyone. End of chapters 33 and 34. Now, onto the journey towards the demon city.